the welding of AI together with a person. And so you get somebody whose productivity is massively increased, and they're going to outcompete somebody who doesn't have an AI sidekick.
Our philosophy has always been with technologies, where can we add value, right, to our business and our clients?
Do you think that our progress is going to start looking more exponential than it already has looked? I'm Zach Turbis, Director of Marketing and Communications at NEI Global Relocation. We have Dr. Jeremy Kedziora here with me, who is an AI expert, and Greg Keith, our Chief Information Officer at NEI Global Relocation. Jeremy is the Endowed Chair of Artificial Intelligence at Milwaukee School of Engineering. And Jeremy, did you want to say a few words about your background?
Sure, I can give you the 30 seconds, right? So I have a PhD in political science. I spent my time in grad school doing research on game theory, which is the applied math of modeling choices. Also did some machine learning, statistics, that kind of thing. And then I also did some political science, although not very much. After grad school, I went and I worked at the Central Intelligence Agency for 9 years. And I led a lot of different kind of AI machine learning efforts there. I spent 2 years leading a data science team at a tech startup focused on financial tech. And then I spent another 2 years leading another data science team at Northwestern Mutual focused on cybersecurity. And now I'm back in academia doing research, teaching students. It's good.
Nice. And Greg, did you want to give a little introduction to yourself?
Yep, so as you said, CIO of NEI Global Relocation, have a degree in computer science, and for over 30 years been delivering technology solutions for organizations. I had started out my career with McGraw-Hill, developing some software for publishing books, and then moved on to Conagra Foods for 18 years, where we were delivering technology solutions for managing the production of food. And then I went to a Berkshire Hathaway company for a while, managing financial transactions and helping banks with their portfolio products, and then have been at NEI for over 10 years now, working in the relocation industry.
Now, you said you have a background in political science too. How much does that influence how you think about AI? I'm just curious.
Oh, that's a good question. Actually, it influences it quite a lot in the sense that in the social sciences, we care a lot about modeling decision-making, right? And actors who are making choices. And actually, that's how I see all of artificial intelligence, right? I see AI as just a big set of tools for automated decision-making purposes, right? You could have an AI that looks at images and figures out what's in the images, and it's making decisions about what it sees there, right? You could have an AI that drives a car. It's making decisions about how to turn the wheel. So all of that focus on decision-making stems from my time in social science. And I use it to inform the way I think about research, like even down to the present day, 15 years later.
Oh, so first of all, just what is AI?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think a lot of people define that in different ways. And if you don't pin down what the term means, right, then you end up kind of talking past each other. But my sense of AI is sort of what I already said. I think it's a good way to think of it is as automated decision-making. And you can have a lot of different forms of AI built in different ways to do different tasks. But at the root of it all of them are methods for making decisions without the need for human intervention.
How would you sort of, if you had to sort of do a genealogy of AI, how would that look? Kind of like, how did it start? Where are we now? Where are we going?
Sure, yeah. So my sense is that artificial intelligence is not in any sense new, right? It's actually quite, I don't want to say old, right? But it's got a long kind of history. The people who started doing work in AI started doing that work 80 years ago in the 1940s, 1950s. And, you know, the first people writing on these topics, right, that would have called them artificial intelligence, you know, would have been people like Alan Turing writing, you know, on computation way back in the 40s. And so in that time, right, AI, what they would have thought of AI as any capability that lets a computer do what a human can do, right? So any capability that lets a computer make choices the same way that a human does. And in that time, right, there were a lot of, it was all very, I don't want to use the word primitive, but, you know, it was all kind of very new. And there were a lot of different kind of AI capabilities being developed to do different things. Most famous one that I'm aware of is Arthur Samuel's checkers playing AI that learned to play checkers, not with a huge degree of mastery, but with a passable level of skill, right? So it could beat like an unskilled player and would lose, terribly.
You say it could beat me.
Right. Well, I don't know. Yeah. So that's the first 30 years of AI from like the 40s to the 80s, right? When you hit the 80s, you got a lot more computing power, and so people started to spend a lot of time throwing data at computers and letting the computers learn from the data. Right. That's called machine learning. And then another 30 years has gone by, and we've hit the 2010s, and you've got even more increases in computing power, and that led to a focus on a part of machine learning called deep learning that continues right on to the present day up till now. ChatGPT being a great example of a deep learning artificial intelligence.
What's the mechanics of deep learning? Like, what can it do that previous generations of AI couldn't do?
Well, I don't know that it does different tasks. It does the same tasks, it does them better than previous generations of AI. Deep learning is really good at working with like unstructured data, like a book, right? If you want to have an AI that can read a book, deep learning is awesome at that. If you want to have an AI that can look at an image, right, without any kind of like fooling around with the image, right, just give it the picture in its raw form, deep learning is great at that kind of thing.
Where does generative AI fit into the equation?
Generative AI is usually well. There's a lot of different ways you can make an AI generative. When people use the term nowadays, it usually seems to refer to some sort of deep learning model that has been constructed so that its decision-making capability can be used to make new content, right, of one kind or another. Could be new images, could be new text, right, could be all kinds of different things. So generative AI is also not new, right? But in its kind of latest form, it's sort of the logical next step in the use of deep learning.
Okay, so we had the lay of the land kind of up to that covered. What is artificial general intelligence, and are we headed there anytime soon?
Yeah, artificial general intelligence is like the holy grail, right, of computer science, right? So an AGI would be a kind of AI that would be kind of self-adaptive, self-learning, able to do any task, as well as or better than a human can do it. Doesn't necessarily mean that an AGI would be like conscious, right, or sentient or something like that. It just means that it's very, very capable, self-adaptive, and doesn't have any need for human intervention, right, in the way that it learns and grows. So my sense is that AGI is one of these things that's always like 10 years away, right? Whether it was 20 years ago, and it was 10 years away 20 years ago, and now it's still 10 years away, now. So I don't see it coming anytime soon. And I don't, having done this for a while now, done this kind of work, right, I don't even see how it's possible within the current paradigm that we use to build artificial intelligence.
So one of my sort of thoughts that I had when this artificial intelligence explosion happened, at least when we all became aware of it, was like, is it closer? Is like AGI closer because we will use what we currently have in the form of artificial intelligence to get there? Like, will that sort of be a catalyst to speed it up? But then you said something in your talk that said basically it can't surpass what we've already given it, Yeah. So how do I think about, the timeline for technology moving forward now that AI is part of the equation? And then are we sort of headed inevitably towards AGI?
Yeah, those are all great questions to which I have no certain answers, right? I would think of
speculate, make something up.
I'll do that. I can speculate with the best of them, right? So, I think you should kind of think of it as in like two bins, right? There's the everything else bin that's not AI, right? That could be AI empowered, right? And then there's the AI bin itself. So, researchers have been on this deep learning kick since 2012, and something like GPT 3.5 or GPT 4.0, the thing that powers ChatGPT, is thought to have several hundred billion parameters under the hood. And at some point, you can't just keep throwing more parameters into these models and expecting them to do better, right? There's going to be like kind of a leveling off, right, where the performance just doesn't increase. And that's what I meant a minute ago when I said I don't see how it's possible in the current paradigm. right? Because in the current paradigm, what we would do is we just throw more compute, throw more parameters into a model, and it'll somehow get better. I don't see it working, in a qualitatively different way. I don't see how doing that just, will change things in a qualitatively different way. So I have the sense that development of AI is gonna level off, right, in the current paradigm, and we're gonna have to find new ways to proceed forward. The rest of it, though, everything else spin, right, that's not AI, I think that has the potential to be massively changed and influenced and impacted by the use of AI. So scientific research, right, business processes, self-driving vehicles, all this kind of stuff, right, has had no, involvement with AI in the past, at least not with the latest and greatest AI algorithms in the past, So now is the time, right, for something like ChatGPT, to be adapted to those domains and have a big impact.
Nice. So speaking to that, because we're a relocation company, sort of our business is helping companies move the people that they have wherever they need to go, right? And so we deal with jobs. And, speaking to the bin where you have artificial intelligence either assisting humans or replacing them, how do you foresee industries changing going forward? And I'll give you some targets to aim at. So if we start with manufacturing, is there any ways that you can sort of forecast, maybe generally speaking, what jobs are maybe at risk and what jobs will change, but and maybe education will have to fill the gaps in some areas?
I actually don't think that manufacturing sector is going to be one of the larger impacted ones. I think the impacts from automation and AI have already happened in manufacturing, and you can see that on the car assembly line, right, where you've got a bunch of robotics involved, right? That's maybe AI driven or heuristically driven or whatever, right? But that kind of impact on labor has already happened. I think the place where you might see a larger impact is in white collar jobs. And I have a friend who works in Silicon Valley. He's been there for the last 15 years. And he told me once that every company in Silicon Valley, right, that's trying to do AI stuff has as its goal to kill the white collar job, right, to replace it with an automated AI solution. So I think that's something that people are consciously aiming for. I don't know, though, that that ends in massive layoffs. I don't foresee that. I think what happens instead is you have the kind of the welding of AI together with a person. And so you get somebody whose productivity is massively increased, and they're going to outcompete somebody who doesn't have an AI sidekick, right? But I don't think that leads to massive layoff. I think what happens is because the workforce gets more competitive or more productive, right? That you will have less hiring over time rather than a bunch of folks losing their jobs, right? So it would be an impact on job growth, right, in kind of white collar sectors rather than a bunch of people losing their jobs. That's my sense of how it's going to impact things.
Okay. So what happens, I've heard a lot of things around AI and medical, doctors helping diagnose things. Is that going to be impacting, because I'm trying to figure out how that would work in terms of research, because the research still needs to be done. And I don't see AI doing that. Do doctors take more of a research role, and then what they feed into AI then can be used for diagnosis purposes? Or, is that going to change the medical sector? And if so, how?
Yeah. Those are more great questions. I'll tell you, I have a growing partnership with the Medical College of Wisconsin right now on kind of exactly the kind of project you described, where we have a bunch of information, right, about patient histories that's been de-identified, right, anonymized, and we want to use some sort of machine learning algorithm or artificial intelligence method to create diagnoses, right, based on that data, so that a doctor, right, or a med student, right, or a resident or an intern or somebody standing at a patient's bedside doesn't have to keep in memory 100 different physical signs of something, right? They can, kind of offload some of that work because that's just beyond the ability of anybody to do, right, effectively. So we got these kinds of things going on right now. I think I'm not special in that way. There's a lot of people who are interested in building AIs that are aimed at diagnosing different kinds of things, like an AI that could look at a EKG signal, right, and make a call about someone going into AFib or something like this. There's a lot of interest in doing that kind of thing. At the same time, if you ask people, right, do you want AI involved in your medical, right, your medical life, right? Like 86% of people say no. So I think there's some. Yeah, I mean, no, it wasn't AI, right? But I think it's one of those things where there's some real hurdles to overcome, right? In terms of trust, in terms of efficacy, because these diagnoses, right, are difficult to do for a professional, right, doctor, and all we can do with AI is encode what a doctor already knows how to do, right? So we're going to have to get better data. That's going to require kind of more conscious data collection by medical professionals. There's a lot of work to be done, but I do think people are aiming in that direction.
Mm-hmm. And I'm just kind of thinking out loud right here. When you have a doctor sort of working with AI so that it remembers all those things, it gives you what it thinks could be, and you're sort of a check and balance on the AI. And earlier you said, for complex issues, you better be an expert yourself.
Right.
If you're going to be working with AI. So, just thinking about that, it's not like it would replace doctors, but it would make them more
effective.
Proficient. Yeah.
Effective. It would make them more effective. I will say though that specific comment was for ChatGPT.
Okay.
ChatGPT does not have a good sense of like truth, right, or correctness. That's just not what it's designed to do. It's designed to have conversations, right?
It has made so many things up on me.
Right? Yeah, no, 100%, right? And so,
Very entertaining.
So there are other AI machine learning algorithms, right, that do try to build in a sense of truth and correctness, right, in the way that they're constructed. And I think those would be the kind of things you'd want to draw on for like medical diagnoses and things like that.
You said something to the effect of, there are ways that you can use AI that are beneficial for businesses, and then there's ways that you shouldn't use AI. So you said like don't AI everything.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, what I would say there is, you don't want to start by saying, what should we use AI for? You should start with a problem, right? Start with a well-defined problem. This is annoying me. I hate this, right? This process takes 15 days out of every month. I don't like this. I need to fix it, right? Start with a problem, just like you would anything else, right? AI is not special in that way. Start with a problem. And then, you can figure out what kind of resources you throw against the problem. Maybe one of those resources is AI. And so, that's what I would say, is you don't want to, like you said, right? You don't want to think, oh, how can I AI today, right? You want to think about, here's a problem that's annoying, right? And what's in my toolkit to solve that problem? Oh, AI is one of those things. Let me deploy that against this. I think that's the way to go about it, right? And then the other thing you want to do is make sure that all the relevant people are in the conversation right from the beginning, so nobody gets surprised. Right? Like you may think you have an idea about how to solve this problem, but you sit over here on this team and this other team actually owns that problem and they don't want anything to do with what you've come up with. That's not a recipe for success, right? Even if you've got the best artificial intelligence machine learning solution in the world, right? That's not going to be a recipe for success. So you want to make sure that you're doing everything in a consensual fashion, bringing folks along. And that's the only way to make it successful in a business context, I think.
I'm thinking I heard you also say something to the effect of, there doesn't have to be sort of like proprietary security concerns inherently in like long language models, right?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple ways to run big AI models, right? You can run them in an online sense where they're constantly learning from the data that you're supplying to them as you use them. Or you could run them in like an offline sense where they've been trained, constructed, they're fixed closed systems, you bring them in, you use them, and they don't change, right? They don't learn from you. They're not doing anything with your information. I think large language models can be run in either way, right? So ChatGPT runs in a largely offline sense. At least that's my understanding of it, right? My speculative understanding of it, given that's a proprietary system, right? It runs in a largely offline sense that's periodically updated, kind of with pretty low frequency, like every few months or something like this. They periodically update it. And what that means is that it's not constructed so that when you're giving it prompts, it's like immediately grabbing those prompts, putting them in its memory and keeping them forever, right? That's not really what it's doing. OpenAI might decide to do that, right? But that's a policy choice. It's not like intrinsic to the way the model has to be constructed and run. So I think whenever you're using those models that are kind of offline, right, that are already built, that are closed and they're not kind of learning from you, you should be able to use them in a way that's like safe, that doesn't involve compromising, right, proprietary or confidential information, encoding it in the model, right, and letting it out, right, accidentally from the walls, right, of your business. It's those online capabilities you want to worry more about, because online models are very definitely taking your information and encoding it in some way in their memory, right? And then you can lose control of it, right? And it can go outside of where you want it to be, and
Yeah. So Greg, I'm curious, what has been your philosophy thinking about AI and how we're integrating it into our business? Where did you start, and explain your approach?
Yeah, it's a really good question, because a lot of what Jeremy's talking about is really trying to find a value and a use of AI within your organization. So our philosophy has always been with technologies, where can we add value, right, to our business and our clients? We don't want to just pay for technology because it's the right, it's something that we want to do to be competitive. It's adding value. So that's how we approach all of our technology, whether it be automation technology, or as we look at ways to further leverage AI, for example. And we have some very small use cases of AI that we're using today, nothing to the scale that you're describing. But what it demonstrates is with our strategy and approach, we understand the value. It's an opportunity to improve our business. So for example, the problem for us is answering questions when our clients ask us a question, right? So we have an entire team of operations team members that take calls, take emails, answer the same questions over and over and over again. What a great opportunity to solve that problem, right? So if we can come up with a solution, whether it be on our Global Gateway portal or in our back office systems, that can go look up that answer within seconds, right? So whether it be a question about our relocating transferees, when is my pack load date? When one of the drivers is going to show up to do this for me, right? So now it probably takes most of 15 minutes. Somebody has to call up, talk to our operations team. They look it up in our system. We answer the question, right? Or can I just use chat AI to say, answer this question for me, right? So to do that, we would definitely have to secure that information, right? It would have to be an offline model to ensure the security of our clients' information, right? We would teach it everything about our clients' relocation program, the relocation packages, everything that we would need to accurately answer those questions, right? We can't use a public ChatGPT solution, because the answers are just not accurate for what we do, in moving people around the globe. So what we would also be looking at is how can we integrate that solution with our back office system. A lot of our questions are very specific about an employee that we are relocating, right? So we need to be able to have that chat exchange be in a way that provides accurate answers, right? So a lot of it is discovery for us. We've been resisting the pressure from different angles to say, just do whatever you can in AI, right? And we're saying, where can we add the value? So that's where we're starting with.
Yeah, it has to serve a business need.
Right. Yeah. And I just want to add a little bit more to that, because I think, Jeremy, you made a really good point, which is, what are the benefits of AI, right? Well, one of them can be efficiencies in your back office, right? So I've been talking about how we can offload those Q&As from our operations team, right? Then what we do, and we bundle a lot of our automation technologies to kind of take that mundane work away from our workers, right? So that way we free them up to do more value-added work. But the other great benefit is it improves job satisfaction for any IT members. So we're looking at a lot of ways to do that.
Nice. Jeremy, I have a few questions for you that I was like really crossing my fingers, hoping that your political science background and your AI capabilities could tell me the answers to some of these questions. I really want to know sort of how could AI influence the relationships that countries have with one another in the future? Because those relationships a lot of the times lead to business and growth and peace, And so I was just wondering if you had any takes on that you'd like to share.
I mean, I think there's push and pull effects, right, with things like AI. On the pull side, meaning pulling countries together, right, to have closer, more peaceful relationships. Big companies, right, that develop artificial intelligence capabilities have, interests all over the world, right, and that can be like a driver, right, that kind of economic relationship, right, for a country that's headquartered in the U.S., right, but it has, right, interests, in Beijing, right, in Tokyo, right, all over the world, right. That company is going to have a strong interest in making sure that there's specific happy relationships between the relevant, countries involved. And I think in that way, right, the companies that build AI capabilities can be a driver for good relationships between countries. So there's the pull effect, right, or potential pull effect. I also think that AI may be a good way for people from different backgrounds to understand each other, right? You can go and ask ChatGPT, what about this interesting culture that I don't know anything about right now? Can I learn about it, right? It might be an avenue for, learning stuff, right, that you don't already know. With all those caveats before about ChatGPT's kind of loose relationship with the truth, right? Mm-hmm. On the push side, right, I think there's also potentially maybe a lot of competition for control, right, of something like AI, something that's as powerful, and potentially impactful as AI is. And I could certainly imagine that different countries adopt different standards of governance with respect to AI, right? The last thing anybody wants is for some other country with loose controls over scientific research to accidentally build an AGI that turns into HAL 9000, right, and kills a bunch of people, right? That's the last thing they want to have happen, right? So I could imagine that there will be disagreement and conflict, right, about regulation, right, and governance, right, in the same way that there is about climate change.
What's the first step there where that's concerned? Because it seems like when you get multiple countries involved, all serving different interests, a lot of those regulations are voluntary. They're agreed to. It's almost like a least common denominator effect. So what would be the first step with regards to regulations in AI that everyone could possibly agree to?
I mean, I think the first step would have to be the need to agree that it should be regulated, right? That it's an important capability to have some oversight on. And we've in the history of humanity, right? We've done that before, right? We decided, after the First World War, we're not going to use chemical weapons, right? We decided after World War II, we're not going to use nuclear weapons for the most part, right? So we've done that before, right? With really big, powerful capabilities. But I think the first step is a realization, that this needs to be controlled and regulated. And with the other two examples I just gave you, right, the governments involved had in-your-face data, right, about exactly how horrific these things were, right? We don't have that with AI yet. So my hope is that we can come to that kind of realization that for the need for regulation, right, before something horrific happens, right, and be anticipatory, right, rather than reactive.
If you were basically advising a panel of countries on, say they have all sat down, they agree that AI should be regulated, what would be the next step after that how would you advise them over the course of the next 30 years to steward AI in a fashion that would lead to flourishing and peace rather than, what you just described?
Yeah, let's avoid that one, right?
Right.
So I think the first things that you're going to have to do, whether it's a U.S. state government, right, interested in regulating AI, or the federal government here in the U.S., or an international commission of different countries, you have to start answering some hard questions, right? What is AI, right? The very first one you asked, right? What is AI? What's behind the regulation boundary and what's not? And then I think you have to start thinking about, which groups, right, do we want to worry about? Do we want to worry about a scientific research lab at a university, right, that has NSF funding? Do we want to regulate that group? Are we worried mostly about big production level large language model AIs, right, that are going to be used by 100 million people, right? What's the scale at which we want to be intervening and regulating? And then what's the regulatory vehicle, right? Do you get a license, right, to build AI? license to use AI, right? License to kill, right? That kind of thing. What's the regulatory vehicle, right? These are hard questions that, the hard, detailed questions about the specifics of how regulation would be defined, right, created, enforced, right, et cetera, that I think any group that wants to take this up is going to have to, worry about trying to answer. Otherwise, you're going to create, something that's ineffective, right, that can't be enforced, and that really does nothing. That's
way better to talk about it now while we're in our infancy
sure.
than to try and deal with it when we're on the cusp of doing something we shouldn't do.
100%.
Yeah. How will humans use AI and in the future that might influence maybe where they live, what they do, and who they associate with, maybe how they live their life. Like, how are they going to think about those things in a way that might be different than what we've experienced in the last 100 years?
I think that this is actually an interesting question for a mobility relocation company, right, where people are going to live and how they're going to kind of reach their professional work environments. I have the sense that AI may create like larger spheres, right, in which people can kind of live, right, and still work like within the sphere, right. So you saw this with COVID, right, for example. Where people, all of a sudden they have to commute anymore, right? So there's much less need for them to be, close to their location, right? Close to their business location. So you could imagine something like a self-driving car. Like in the movie Minority Report, they had all those self-driving cars from way back in the, early 2000s. So I don't mind living in the exurbs of Washington, D.C., right? If I've got a self-driving car that can take me down 66, right?
It's your reading time.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's my reading time, it's my relaxing time, it's when my kids don't bother me, right? And I think that's maybe one of the futures, right? Or one of the potential effects of AI is to kind of broaden the area over which someone can kind of exist, right? But still be connected, right? Within. Yeah, that's my sense of it anyway.
Can you envision a future where artificial general intelligence and Neuralink exist in the same sphere? And what does that look like?
Well, I guess it would look like you having an AI sidekick implanted in your brain, right?
Is it a sidekick or a control?
Yeah, I mean, well, that's what you got to really worry about, right?
Yeah.
Be very careful to avoid the second outcome there.
So the reason I asked that question is, it seems to me like we're headed towards artificial general intelligence at some point in the future. Like, it just seems like it's so many people's goals. We've gotten this far. And if it's in the crosshairs of so many people, I imagine we'll probably figure it out someday, right? And then you also have, like with Elon Musk and Neuralink, a desire to basically integrate the technological capacity that we have accumulated thus far into us and make it part of each other. But then I foresee sort of those as almost like playing chicken with each other, and I don't know if they're going to budge.
I think those are very complementary things, right?
Yeah. Okay. Or they can be.
Yeah, they can be a very complementary thing, right? It's in some sense the idea of Neuralink, outside of something like giving a paraplegic the ability to walk again, right? The idea of Neuralink is not really, I don't think it's qualitatively different than like me having my phone with an AGI on my phone, okay, right? It's just a delivery vehicle, in some sense. And that's as close as it gets, right, to being, with you all the time, right? But it's just a delivery vehicle. Where I can, ChatGPT's API at openai.com or .org, right, is just a delivery vehicle as well, right? And they're not different from each other in a qualitative sense. They're just different in that, ChatGPT's API is not always with you right now. Whereas if you had an AI, on a Neuralink embedded in your head, right, it would be. Mm-hmm. So I view them as complementary, right, in the sense that implant strategy like that would just really make AI more available to you than it is right now.
Do you think that our progress is going to start looking more exponential than it already has looked?
No, actually, I think I said this earlier, right? I think that our progress in the current AI paradigm is going to taper off. I think that's what's going to happen. The current paradigm being deep learning, being training AIs using things like loss functions and lots of compute cycles and data. I think that's going to taper off. I think there's going to have to be some kind of shift, right, from what we currently do to some other strategy for building these things, right, if you want to see exponential growth. You can check back in 5 years and see if I...
Okay, yep.
We'll mark that one down. Check it out.
Exactly. Well, you've certainly given us a lot to think about, and I want to thank you so much for taking this time to get together with us and let us pick your brain. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy.
My pleasure.
It's been great.
Yep.